Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, the podcast that takes, those really dense academic papers and makes them surprisingly interesting. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita.
Today we're going to be looking at academic spin-offs,
Yay.
ASOs, and we've got some new research here from the Strategic Entrepreneurship Journal. And it's got some pretty surprising findings about how these companies can find success. So basically the big question is, can you really balance these big academic dreams with, actually making money?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's fascinating because there's not like a simple answer.
Right.
It's not like just do this and you'll be successful.
No.
It's more nuanced than that.
Okay, so before we get into all the details, let's just start with the basics. What are ASOs? We've got some listeners out there who might be new to the whole concept.
Right. Yeah, absolutely so. ASOs are companies created to commercialize knowledge that comes out of university research.
Okay.
So they're kind of like born in the lab, but then they aim to make it in the marketplace.
So they're kind of like this bridge then between like the ivory tower of academia and then like the real world of business.
Yeah, and that's what makes them so interesting because they're kind of living in two worlds.
Right.
They're in this world of scientific discovery, but also this world of like profit margins. So that creates unique opportunities, but also challenges.
Yeah, it's like trying to mix oil and water.
Exactly. Yeah, it can be done, but it takes a certain finesse.
Right. So what are some of the specific challenges then that ASOs face? Does having a foot in both of these worlds help or hurt?
That's the million-dollar question. And the research actually gets at this, like this tension, like do these big academic goals ultimately help or hurt an ASO's chances of making money?
Yeah, you can see how it could go either way. Like on the one hand, having that academic rigor could give them an edge. But then again, maybe they get so focused on the research itself that they forget about actually selling something. Yeah,
you're hitting on a key point, and there is existing research on this, and it's kind of all over the map. So some studies suggest that prioritizing academic goals can actually be a good thing.
Okay.
For an ASO, like it can lead to more innovation, which ultimately makes a company more valuable.
So focusing on the science can actually lead to more money.
Exactly. But then there's another school of thought that says all this academic stuff is a distraction.
Okay.
And ASOs need to be laser focused on bringing a product to market, actually making money. And all this other stuff gets in the way.
So who's right?
Yeah.
Where's the truth?
Well, this new research, I think, it takes a really interesting approach using what's called the behavioral theory of the firm.
Okay, you're going to have to break that down for me.
Yeah.
What is that?
It might sound complex, but it's actually pretty simple. It boils down to the fact that everyone, even brilliant scientists and entrepreneurs, they have limited attention.
Okay.
They can't focus on everything at once. They have to make choices about where to direct their energy.
It's like you can only juggle so many balls.
Exactly.
At once.
Yeah.
Before you start dropping them.
Yeah. So in the context of ASOs, they have to decide how much attention to give to what the researchers are calling academic exploration versus academic exploitation.
Okay, I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah.
Exploration and exploitation.
It's not as dramatic as it sounds. It's not about digging for buried treasure or anything like that. So academic exploration is about pushing the boundaries of knowledge. It's about doing research testing new ideas and validating those ideas through rigorous scientific methods.
So it's about expanding the knowledge base.
Exactly. On the other hand, academic exploitation is more about using the knowledge that already exists for academic gain.
Okay.
So think about things like publishing papers.
Yeah.
In prestigious journals, getting awards and recognition.
So exploration's expanding the pie. And then exploitation's trying to get a bigger slice.
You got it. So the researchers had a hunch, what we call a hypothesis about how this focus on academic goals would impact an ASO's financial success.
Okay.
They predicted that the relationship would look like an inverted U shape.
Okay, so like a hill.
Yeah.
You go up, you reach the top, then you go down.
Precisely. So they thought that a little bit of focus on academic goals would be beneficial.
Okay.
It could drive exploration, boost the ASO's reputation, help attract talent and collaborators.
So it could be like a little bit of focus there can prime the pump for commercial success?
That's the idea. But they also predicted that too much focus on academic goals would start to backfire.
Okay, so like anything else, moderation is key.
Exactly. The researchers thought if ASOs become too focused on publishing papers or winning awards, they might start to neglect the practical side of things, like developing products that people actually want to buy.
Right.
Or building a sustainable business model.
Yeah, it's like writing a brilliant symphony and then locking it in a drawer. You know, no one benefits from it. So too much focus could hurt their chances of making money.
Right.
Okay, so they had a hunch. Did their research actually back this up?
So this is where things get really interesting.
Right.
Their findings threw a bit of a curveball. It turns out that ownership structure...
Ownership structure meaning? Like who owns the company?
Yeah.
Like how much is earned by the academics versus outside investors?
Exactly. Has a significant impact on the relationship between academic goals and financial performance.
So who's calling the shots really matters.
It does.
If the academics are in control, they might be more likely to focus on those academic goals.
Right.
Even if it means delaying success commercially.
That's one way to look at it. And on the flip side, if non-academics have a majority stake, they might push for more commercially driven approach, potentially at the expense of those lofty ambitions.
So it's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
You know, figuring out who has the final say and how that influences the company's priorities. Okay, so I feel like we're about to get into some specific scenarios now. Is that right?
Yeah, you read my mind. The research actually outlines 3 distinct scenarios that emerged from their data, each with its own recipe for success.
All right, let's dive into those and see what insights we can glean for our listeners.
So the first scenario is what I like to call the sweet spot.
Okay.
You have low academic ownership. So you know those business-minded investors have more say, combined with a moderate focus on academic goals. And in this scenario, that classic inverted U-shape we talked about actually holds true.
So a little bit of academic focus is a good thing here.
Exactly. It drives innovation, it builds credibility, it attracts partners, but it doesn't completely take over the company's focus.
Right.
Those non-academic investors, they bring their business savvy to the table, helping to translate those academic discoveries into actual products and services.
So they're providing the bridge between the lab and the market.
Now, scenario number 2 is a little different. Here we see high academic ownership. So the scientists are really in the driver's seat here, but they pair that with a lower focus on academic goals.
So it's like they're saying, we might be academics, but we're here to hustle.
Yeah.
We want to make a difference. Get this product out there.
It's a great way to put it. And because they're not getting bogged down in publishing papers or chasing awards, they can operate more efficiently. There's less potential for conflict between those academic and commercial goals. Everyone's rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, it's all about getting that product to market.
Yeah.
Making an impact.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so we've got the balanced approach. We've got the hustle approach. What's the third scenario?
The third scenario is where things get really exciting.
Okay.
This is where we see high academic ownership and a high focus on academic goals.
So these are the ASOs that are really pushing the boundaries of science.
Absolutely. They're all about cutting-edge research, groundbreaking discoveries, pushing the limits of what's possible. And you know what? That actually attracts a certain type of commercial interest.
So some investors are actually drawn to that high risk, high reward environment.
Yeah, they're not just looking for a quick buck. They're looking for something truly revolutionary.
So they're like funding the future.
Exactly. And these investors are often willing to play the long game. They understand that groundbreaking science takes time and resources, and they're willing to make that investment because they believe in the potential of the technology.
It's inspiring.
It is inspiring, but it's important to note that these 3 scenarios are very distinct. What works for one ASO might not work for another.
Okay.
It all depends on their goals, their ownership structure, and the nature of their technology.
So there's no magic formula.
Not at all.
No one size fits all.
It's about understanding those underlying principles and applying them thoughtfully to each unique situation.
I like that. So you mentioned earlier that they did some extra analysis to kind of back up their findings.
That's right.
What did they look into?
They wanted to see if a focus on academic goals actually translated into more academic output.
You know, like publications.
Like publications and things like that,
Sure.
Putting their money where their mouth is, you know?
Yeah, did they end up publishing more?
They did the research, showed a clear link between a focus on academic goals and the number of publications an ASO produced.
Yeah.
And guess what? That
know.
effect was even stronger in ASOs with high academic ownership.
Well, that makes sense. If the academics are in control
Right.
and they're incentivized to publish,
Right.
of course they're going to produce more.
Exactly. It all comes back to incentives and ownership structure.
So fascinating. But I'm curious, you know, the research focused on Italian ASOs.
Right.
Do you think these findings would hold true in other parts of the world?
That's a great question. Yeah. And it's always tricky to generalize from one context to another. But I think there are some fundamental principles here that likely apply regardless of location.
You mean like the idea that attention is a limited resource? Or that ownership structure matters?
Exactly. Those are pretty universal concepts.
Right.
But of course, the specific ways those principles play out will be influenced by local culture, government policies, the availability of funding, all sorts of other factors.
Maybe the ideal balance between academic and commercial goals shifts a bit depending on where you are.
Precisely.
Think about Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It's all about speed and agility and disrupting the market. You might see a stronger preference there for ASOs that are less focused on the academic side, more focused on getting a product out.
It's all about that move fast and break things mentality.
Exactly.
But then you might have other regions, like certain parts of Europe or Asia, that have a strong emphasis on scientific research and deep tech innovation. And in those contexts, those highly academic ASOs might actually have an advantage.
Because they're pushing the boundaries.
Exactly.
And that attracts top talent and investment.
It's all about context. And I think that's one of the most important takeaways from this research. It encourages us to move beyond those simplistic assumptions and really dig into the specific dynamics at play in each situation.
It's a reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
When it comes to building a successful ASO.
It's about understanding the principles, applying them thoughtfully, and being adaptable to the ever-changing landscape of the market.
And that's what makes ASOs so fascinating. It's this space where innovation and entrepreneurship collide.
Yeah.
It's where the pursuit of knowledge meets the realities of the marketplace.
It's a world full of challenges and opportunities, and it's only going to become more important in the years to come.
I think you've given our listeners a lot to think about today. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a question to ponder.
Okay.
Something to spark further exploration. We've talked a lot about how crucial it is to find that right balance between academic and commercial goals.
Right.
But how do you actually measure your focus on academic goals?
Right.
Is it as simple as counting publications? Or is there a more nuanced way to kind of assess this?
No, that's a great question to consider. It really gets to the heart of what we've been discussing today.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the world of academic spin-offs. But don't let the learning stop here. Keep those brains buzzing and keep exploring this fascinating space. Until next time, stay curious.
Right. So this academic exploitation, it's when an ASO's focus on those academic achievements, things like publications and awards, becomes so intense that it actually starts to hurt the company's bottom line.
So they're so focused on winning science fairs, they forget about making something people can actually use.
Exactly. And you can see how this might play out in a few different ways. Imagine an ASO that develops a brand new super advanced technology.
Okay.
But it's so complex and expensive that no one can actually afford to use it.
So they're winning all these awards, but not really solving a problem in the real world.
Or think about an ASO that pours all its resources into research and development, but they neglect marketing or figuring out how to actually manufacture their product at scale.
So they've got this amazing invention, but no one knows about it, and they can't even make enough of it.
Exactly. And this is where that ownership structure we talked about comes back into play.
Right.
If you've got a lot of academics in control, and their incentives are all tied to those academic achievements, it can create a strong bias towards this kind of exploitation.
Because their success is measured by publications and awards, not necessarily by how much money the company makes.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to have those non-academic voices at the table, the folks who are focused on the business side of things and can help bring those brilliant academic ideas down to earth.
Help ensure that they're building something sustainable.
Right. It's all about finding that balance, that sweet spot where academic rigor and commercial savvy can work together.
So we've talked about the potential pitfalls of focusing too much on academic goals. But there's also a scenario where a strong academic focus can be a good thing.
Absolutely. Remember that third path to success: high academic ownership and a high focus on academic goals.
The rock stars.
Exactly. In this scenario, the ASO is essentially a research powerhouse.
Okay.
They're at the forefront of their field, publishing groundbreaking papers, attracting top talent, and creating a ton of valuable intellectual property.
So they're like the scientific equivalent
Yeah.
of a celebrity chef.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to work with them and invest in their ideas.
That's a great analogy. And this can be a very attractive proposition for certain investors, the ones who are looking for truly disruptive, game-changing technologies.
I'm looking to invest in the future.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that this path to success is not for everyone.
Right.
It requires a specific set of circumstances and a certain appetite for risk.
You need access to significant funding, a strong network of collaborators, a leadership team that's passionate about scientific discovery.
It's not easy, but for those ASOs that can pull it off, the rewards can be immense.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. What shows are the tension between academic and commercial goals? The role of ownership structure. It's been a journey.
We've really explored those nuances of how these companies can thrive in this complex world where science meets the market.
So we talked about the importance of context. How might these findings play out differently in different parts of the world?
It's a crucial question. What works in one place won't necessarily work in another.
Right.
Think about government support for research and innovation.
Okay.
In countries with strong government funding programs for ASOs, you might see more tolerance for that focus on academic goals.
Because there's less pressure to immediately be commercially successful.
Exactly. The government's providing a safety net, allowing those ASOs to pursue those ambitious long-term research projects.
But in countries with less government support, they need to be more pragmatic, more commercially focused.
It's adapt or die.
Exactly.
You got to play the hand you're dealt.
And then you have to consider those cultural factors. Some cultures place a higher value on academic achievement and scientific discovery.
Right.
So that strong academic focus might not be seen as a negative, even if it means delaying that commercialization.
It's all about understanding those cultural nuances.
It all comes back to what we said at the beginning. There's no magic formula.
There isn't. No one-size-fits-all approach.
You got to understand the principles. Apply them thoughtfully. Be adaptable.
And that's what makes the world of ASO so fascinating. It's this space where innovation and entrepreneurship collide.
It's where the pursuit of knowledge meets the realities of the marketplace.
It's a world full of challenges and opportunities, and it's only going to become more important in the years to come.
And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for more captivating deep dives like this one. And if you're enjoying the show and want to support us in creating more insightful content, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Every contribution helps us continue this journey of exploration and discovery. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.